Hi everyone, it's me, Tim, and today I want to talk about me being the bad guy. The reason I want to talk about this is I have seen comments, I read almost all the comments that come in. I see a lot of comments where people say, or a few, where people say, wow, Tim really comes across as the hero in all his stories. And it's not my intent, although I've talked to people about this, and it's hard to tell a story from your point of view where you're the villain. In fact, I would ask people who are saying that, when was the last time you publicly talked about being a bad person? But it made me think because I've told several stories already on this channel where I didn't think I looked good. When I was talking about game developer caution, and one of the stories was about a programmer who gave me back a really big estimate for something that thought would take less than an hour. That devolved. I thought that was going to be a discussion about how development these days is super cautious, and the idea of a quick prototype just doesn't exist anymore, even though it has huge advantages in game development. Instead, it devolved into I should have fired that guy versus the people saying I was a terrible manager. And it spun out into things I never mentioned. Like, people were making it sound like I expected him to go off and come back in 45 minutes with it, or that he wasn't going to talk to his boss about it. It was like that was not the point of the story. But that made me realize, wow, some of these stories make me look bad. And then I thought, well, wait, there was at least one story where I said I was the bad guy, and that was when I said I had to fire someone at Carbine that I didn't want to fire. I didn't think he deserved to be fired, but my boss did, so he ordered me to fire him. I didn't feel like a good guy. I'm sure that guy, I'm a villain. But I gave my side of it. I gave my context, like why I felt bad, and then I went back to my boss and I said I'm never going to do that again. And it reminded me when I wrote my memoirs, this big thick tome, I said one of my rules was I was just going to talk about what people did and said, because that's all I remember and that's all my notes have. I don't know what they were thinking or feeling, but I knew what I was thinking or feeling. So in many of the stories, I put in my side of what I was thinking and feeling. And one of my reviewers said, the reason he thought I came across as mean is because I talk about what I'm thinking and feeling. It gives context for me and makes me the more empathetic character in the story. So I've been thinking about that along with those comments. So I thought I'd give 3 stories where I was the bad guy. I'm not going to give you any context on my end. I'm just going to say what they did and what I did. The third one will probably make some of you Arcanum fans upset. And good. It's the whole point of this is I've been asking people not to view everything as heroes and villains. So here I am being a villain 3 times. I picked stories. These stories are all over 20 years old. They all happened to Troika. In fact, they all happened during the making of Arcanum. So I did it that way so that nobody would... these are all way in the past, and there's no company to go, hey, you just... we don't want you talking about, bad stuff during development. That's not going to happen because it's Troika. Troika's dead. So, here are the 3 stories. Remember, there's a whole video about me talking about text schematics, which I loved, and I made a little book of all the text schematics in the game because I liked them so much, and I thought their artwork was really cool, and the interface was cool, and I didn't have anything to do with it. Well, I didn't have anything to do with it because I wasn't invited to the design meetings. They had them secretly at first, and when I wasn't there, because they didn't want me involved, because I was told that I dominated design meetings, that I pushed my own designs really hard. When I critiqued other people's ideas, it made them feel dumb. It made them feel like they shouldn't be suggesting their ideas. And then when they finished doing the design, I said, well, I'm not coding it. And luckily, Mark Harrison stepped up and did the code for all the technical schematics. So I love these, but these not only have nothing to do with me, apparently they wouldn't have even existed had I been in charge. And yeah, I already told you I made all those tech skills that I talked about. So that was one where I was seen as an impediment to a good design going forward. The second one, this is interesting. I've had to figure out how to say this without giving my context because it involved something I was talking about. But one day I was overheard saying to another employee, Leonard would never figure that out. It's way too complicated. That person went back to Leonard and said, Tim's back there basically saying you're stupid. Leonard came back to me. I admitted to saying that statement and a number of other statements too. Leonard was upset. So was the person who overheard. I wouldn't apologize. And that caused months of tension. Here's the third one. When we started doing Arcanum, Sierra always said, hey, we have to do PR while it's being made. There was very little PR when Fallout was being made. They said, we don't want to do that. So they were watching what we were making, system mechanics, setting-wise, and they said, we love the setting. We want people not just to read about it, we want them to get involved. So we had an idea. And their idea was, let's do a contest where people will send in their description of an idea for a background. Because remember, one of the things you could pick during character creation in Arcanum was your character background. They said, let's let fans. We're doing an article about it. We'll put up stuff on our webpage, and then we'll have a contest where you read about the setting, and then you see some example backgrounds we know we're going to ship with, and then they can write their own background and send it in. And the winner it will be included in the shipping game. I asked, how are we going to judge these? Is it just the idea, or is it going to be how it's written? Because if we just judge the idea, are we going to put a poorly written background in the game? Or are we going to rewrite it and then have the person who won the contest maybe not even be able to recognize their own background and maybe even say publicly, I didn't write that. They rewrote mine. Or are we going to judge on both idea and things like grammar and spelling and execution and throw out all the ones that are poorly written, even if they have really good ideas? The contest discussion then devolved into arguing over how we would judge the entries. People got really angry. Really awful things were said. Sierra, it was a phone, we were together and we were talking to Sierra on a phone call. They ended the call. The contest never happened, never came up again. I was told by several people that I was the fault that the contest never happened because I was very argumentative during the meeting. And so, because of me, you didn't get that wonderful Arcanum contest. So there. Without giving you any more context, there were 3 times where I was the bad guy in a story. That's as bad guy perspective as I can tell it. I'm sure in all 3 of those stories, plus the generalist story, plus the firing story, to other people in that room, I was and still am the bad guy. It's difficult to tell stories this way. I've talked to the guy who said my memoirs are written in a kind of mean fashion, and he even said, yeah, I think you may be right about because you give your side of it, but they don't give theirs. He said, his suggestion was, well, you should contact everybody that you tell stories about and get their side of it. And I'm like, and what if I can't get their side? Should I not put the story in? Should I put it anyway and say I contacted them and they refused? Should I put it in anyway and just not say anything and just give my side? And he wasn't sure. And I also pointed out that this thing's already 500 and some pages long. It's 558 pages long. If I took every story in here, and it's all stories, if I take every story in here and I try to do the other side, this thing's going to be 1,000 pages. Plus, at one point, does it stop being an autobiography and start being a historically accurate document, a history book? Because what I was trying to write was memoirs of what, like, sort of like a life in video games, a life spent in video games. It's hard to do that, but at least I have my notes. I don't want to guess what other people were feeling or thinking. I only want to say what people said to me or what they did. And in most cases, I want to say what I watched them do. Like I mentioned, I drew the line at telling stories that other people told me. That, like, I had several people contact me and go, "Oh, you didn't tell this story about when I was talking to our publisher or whatever." And I'm like, "I wasn't there." And he goes, "Yeah, but you can say Leonard said this." And I'm like, "Yeah, but everything in there it's your story, not mine." So for all the people who say I'm always the hero of the stories, here's a video of 3 stories where I'm definitely not the hero. I'm also going to make a concerted effort not to refer back to these stories and give context for them. So they can just sit out there and be, wow, Tim could really be a jerk sometimes. And I've said this before. Everybody I talk about, including me, had their good moments and their bad moments. If you try to cast everything into this hero and villain mentality that you're really trying to push, this whole, mode of seeing the world, you're going to be really disappointed, because I don't think anybody that I can tell stories about is 100% a hero in every story I could tell, or 100% a villain in every story I could tell. And yes, there are people who didn't like working with me. And yes, for a lot more reasons than I had a lot of ideas. There were people who said I pushed my ideas harder than theirs. There were people who said that I wouldn't listen to their ideas. There were people who said that I coded too fast and too much, and that if I had simply written better code for less features, we would have had much better games. So they think some of the games were ruined because my code was bad. And, well, a lot of my games are known for being buggy, and Outer Worlds wasn't. So I guess what I'm trying to say is all the stuff I'm talking about, this video included, I'm trying to give you guys a window into game development. If what you want to do is make it a window into good guy, bad guy stories, or hero villain stories, or old young, or lazy, hardworking, go right ahead. But I'm concerned you're going to be missing the bigger points of some of these videos. I'm trying to talk about really big trends that I see happening in the industry, for good and for bad. So if you want to get into it, I'm trying to say this is what it's going to be like. And I've said my selfish reason, I want people to make video games for me to play. But the main purpose of this was there's a bunch of stories. I don't come across good in any of them. Chew on them all you want. I will go back to regular storytelling tomorrow.